For over 12 weeks, we participated in a pre-apprenticeship cybersecurity program through iQ4. We were tasked with creating an organization that would consult for an entity that had a known cybersecurity breach or leak in the past in the form of a case study. For this project, we developed the team name Phishing Fighters based on the cyber threat of phishing emails. The case would be utilized throughout the entire project as we explored and applied the National Institute of Standards and Technology cybersecurity framework and formed our recommendations as of presenting to the entity's board of directors. This presentation is the accumulation of our project. We were each assigned a role that would serve as the lens that we would not only look at the breach through, but to also further explore what that particular role would consist of. Crystal assumed the role of the compliance analyst, Noah was the IT risk analyst, and Jeffrey served as the information security officer. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, founded in 1901 and now a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, the cybersecurity framework itself exists to help manage and reduce cyber risks, resources and guidance with best practices, standards, and raising awareness. This framework is now developed into its second revision. The core of this framework is to be based on an organization's strategy, policies, and expectations that govern how these 5 pillars are applied. The first pillar is identify. Here, an organization is going to evaluate and determine critical assets that can be subject to compromise. Next, the second pillar is protect. Protect is how the organization will proactively prevent compromise or reduce the risk. The third pillar is detect. Detection is how the organization will locate attacks or breaches and flush out their reach and impact. Respond is the fourth pillar. Responding to an attack or breach is the organization's roadmap to either stop an ongoing breach, fulfill reporting requirements, collect data of an event, and determine the root cause. And the final pillar, recovery. This pillar focuses on how the organization returns back to a function of homeostasis or normal operating, restoring any possible broken relationships or trust with possible direct or indirect victims, and oftentimes boosting public relations. Now we are going to explore the cybersecurity breach for this case study of your South Georgia Medical Center through the Identify pillar. For this project, we relied on published data online regarding the cybersecurity breach through news articles and provided details through iQ4. On November 11, 2021, a planned last day of employment for a female staff member, the employee downloaded over 41,000 records of patients' personal identifying information and protected health information in the form of laboratory results. This individual downloaded the data onto a personal USB drive and removed it from the premises. Your IT department was notified on the large data download. However, it wasn't until the next day through current monitoring software. The 2 major factors that allowed for this to occur were terminals having an unrestricted access point via USB port, unrestricted access to the entire patient database, and the user's ability to download large data sets. It was determined that the data was not altered within the system itself, but a copy was essentially made. Although there were no explicit motivations determined, we have assembled 4 potential motivations that could occur with the specific compromised data we saw here. One motivation could be for a financial reward. This could occur through various methods. A financial reward could be received if the individual was solicited to extract this data as a type of job. The individual could sell the patient data online or possibly use patient data through identity theft routes. Although the scope of the data being extremely limited, consisting of patient names, date of births, and laboratory test results, one high-value example seen when it comes to medical information generally is health insurance details for under or uninsured individuals to receive care they otherwise could not obtain. Another motivation could be that the individual has a personal or romantic relationship with one of the victims, that they are seeking out information for something that could be used as evidence to confront individuals. Additionally, the individual could be attempting to embarrass South Georgia Medical Center by exploiting this security weakness of medical records. This can be seen when leadership may have been notified of such compromise or vulnerability, but the employee felt that action was not taken timely to remedy it and is therefore disgruntled. And finally, political ideologies could be a large motivator. Particularly in more recent years, there have been escalating friction viewpoints in reproductive rights. This could include having details of individuals who tested positive for pregnancy, individuals that no longer are positive for pregnancy, but may be investigated for miscarriages or abortions. In previous decades, for example, in the 1980s and 90s, laboratory results could be extremely valuable and could confirm a positive test result for HIV or AIDS or another type of sexually transmitted disease. When you take your medical center and you value all the assets, you explore the highest critical assets to keep your organization running. And in most cases, like yours, these highest, most critical assets fall into the tangible category. For your South Georgia Medical Center, tangible assets include facilities and infrastructure, durable medical equipment, consumables, pharmaceuticals, and blood products. But it goes without saying that the most valuable, intangible asset is your human capital. In cataloging major assets, we are able to determine that the affected assets in this particular incident are intangible, which includes the hospital's reputation, electronic protected health information, and medical record data. When we apply this to the risk matrix, we can confirm that although this breach can be very hard on the medical center's reputation, with the trust of the public, it is one of the least severe possible disturbances. Now, when we apply the pillar of protection to this specific case, we can identify methods that can be used to protect the breach which occurred. Some of these elements may have been already in place by you. Nonetheless, we focused on these safeguards of plausible avenues that could best prevent this type of internal compromise of data removal. For access controls, we not only are looking at login credentials such as passwords, badge scanners, or fingerprint scanners, we also included routes of access ports such as USB drives, SD cards, or CD-ROM methods that have the potential to cause issues when a terminal is starting up or a way to export data. Also, many organizations have a basic annual employee training for appropriate technology use and security methods in place. Data security can focus on the data encryption and coding itself to thwart attempts through backdoor routes. Having policies and procedures in place that are strictly followed are crucial to self-governance in active efforts of prevention. In addition, continuing education for IT professionals is huge as there are continuous new attacks that occur that require knowledge and expertise to prepare for. And a final safeguard is utilizing technologies to help personnel monitor for attacks through software programs or AI-assisted recognition. And next, the detection pillar. The detection to the breach was through your passive monitoring with software in regular use that recognized the large data download. However, this appeared to only occur during a regular scheduled reflection of network traffic, rather than a continuous monitoring that can evaluate changes in real time for immediate alerts. On one hand, this delay could allow a better view of the result of the user's intentions and actions rather than a premature conclusion that could diminish the full scope. Having a robust view of full events can be helpful when considering avenues that include criminal charges. For instance, if the system were to automatically lock out a user when it appears they are misusing data outside their normal job duties, it could hinder the ability to prove that the act was malicious or intentional, rather than what they did with the information. In this case, your IT department was able to definitively identify that 41,692 patients were impacted directly by the compromise. In-house internal notifications began immediately with the risk compliance officer, IT security team, and human resource stakeholders. You could have better protected the affected assets through four main avenues. First, eliminating the USB access point and restricting the ability to export data to very specific and controlled roles. Most employees have no need to export any patient data outside. If a referral is being made for assisting in the continuity of care for records, these are processes that can all go through the medical records department and greatly reduce the risk of misuse. Secondly, having a quicker turnaround to security breaches is crucial. Accepting a delayed notification of breaches could imply to others that you do not take security measures and patient privacy seriously. Although there may have been a time when a delay in notification was the norm, there are advances that can eliminate this. Third, a robust behavior analysis program, especially when an employee is ending employment, can be extremely beneficial for you. And finally, limiting the user's ability to data access that is required to only their specific role, but also limiting access to all patient data within the database. Next, we look at the response pillar and how this was carried out. Once the facts of the data breach were identified, of it being an isolated incident, identification of the individual at fault, and the compromised data, local law enforcement was able to pursue the former employee and retrieve the USB drive. In this instance, criminal charges were able to be brought forward against the former employee. Timely notifications were made to internal stakeholders such as leadership, the board, human resources, legal, and so forth. However, it appears you have waited to notify required entities such as the Office of Civil Rights under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, local media, and publish statements on your website. Now, federal HIPAA breach regulations dictate that with a compromise of this size, that you are required no later than 60 days from the breach to inform the above-mentioned parties and notify the public. South Georgia made their notification to the Office of Civil Rights and media avenues on the 62nd day since the breach and the 61st day after being notified of the compromise. In addition, the hospital was able to list the breach under an alternative name of a doing business as Hospital Authority of Altosa and Lowndes County, Georgia, which could limit some electronic paper trail when wanting to distance one from the negativity. One area of policy improvement and recommendations is the coordination between human resources and IT when there is a known pending departure or leave of absence of an employee at either the employee's initiation or the employer. It is often standard practice that at the end of a medical profession's position, a housekeeping of sorts, it is required for electronic documentation to wrap up any loose ends until the final moment at the end of their employment. This is frequently seen around clinical documentation that can be a part of patient medical records, outgoing referrals, continuity of care, insurance billing, etc. Not only is it crucial to make sure that a person's access is ended timely, but also to closely monitor any unusual behavior that could occur immediately prior to their departure. Additionally, immediate alerts of any large data downloads both within or outside of normal job duties. However, there can be exceptions. Large dataset extraction can be commonplace for medical record sharing, external referrals, clinical trials and studies, preparation for lectures and conferences, but ensuring that there is monitoring of allowed practices, carefully documented, and standard protections are in place or followed is extremely important. Also, increasing employee trainings of HIPAA compliance, handling patient data, and incorporating a type of no-fault policy for employee security infractions to self-report may help mitigate future employee breaches. Defining an organization-wide security infraction definition versus a more serious security violation may help with self-reporting. This could lead to a more collaborative view of how compromises can occur and how to address them through re-education. A security violation could warrant a more serious investigation and signal either malicious intent or gross negligence versus a lapse of judgment or honest mistake. And finally, the pillar for recovery. You provided a year-long period of credit monitoring for victims of the data breach in an attempt to help ease concerns over their personal information possibly ending up on the internet that could be used against them or cause them harm with their financial or credit status. Two additional items that we observed that could have been a part of your recovery efforts to provide a more positive public relations was the hiring of a new director of marketing and branding. Also, it looks like there were digital marketing campaigns, contests, and entries entered highlighting South Georgia's innovation, various medical practices that could in turn draw in more medical talent to advance hospital accreditations and specialties. In conclusion, Phishing Fighters' recommendations encompass measures mentioned in today's presentation in regards to continuous background security monitoring, hardware modifications, policy improvements, employee trainings, overt monitoring reminders when logging into terminals, and robust data export limitation. References include articles from the HIPAA Journal, SC Media, South Georgia Medical Center publications, the Office of Civil Rights under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology under the U.S. Department of Commerce. Thank you for allowing Phishing Fighters to consult on your recent insider data breach, and we look forward to moving forward to meet your security goals.